We're live at the Keep It in the Culture at the Backstreet Culture Museum podcast. This is episode 5, and this is a beautiful opportunity to learn more about this culture barrel. And with no further ado, please introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you.
I am Voodoo Chief, the Divine Prince. I am also Black Hawk Voodoo Chief in the Masking Culture.
All right.
So tell us what those organizations represent, Prince.
I am the owner, creator, operator of House of the Divine Prince, an authentic New Orleans voodoo house, Voodoo Central. I'm also a Haitian-initiated voodoo priest, so my ministry is voodoo.
Okay, how long have you been practicing voodoo?
I've been involved in voodoo culture over 40 years. I've been a practitioner in maybe 30 years, and I've been initiating into the Haitian traditions in the last 3 years.
Where did you start your first practice? What city?
Maryland,
Okay.
PG County, Maryland.
When did you come to the city of New Orleans to
I've been
practice?
in New Orleans 30 years.
So far in New Orleans, how has it worked out combined with your practice and the culture together?
It's been a journey. When I first came to New Orleans, my first question was, where's the voodoo house? And I realized that there was none. The community is as diverse and in some cases fractured as many of our communities of color or religious communities or cultural communities across America. We have a footprint of many voodoo-oriented traditions here in New Orleans, but they're not necessarily unified or all operating in the same shared space.
Okay. So what is the meaning of voodoo? Go a little bit into explaining us what does voodoo represent.
Voodoo, first and foremost, for us is nature. All things are voodoo, and certainly there is no voodoo without nature. We also have a strong component of ancestral reverence, remembering and honoring the dead and those who came before us, and particularly those who've left a path for us to follow as we move forward into the future.
Okay. So would you title yourself as a culture bearer here in the city of New Orleans?
I am a culture bearer, certainly for voodoo, but also for the black masking traditions.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about the black masking traditions, because when you come out as black masking Indian, are you still in your voodoo regalia? How does that work?
I am. There's not a suit that I've ever sewn that didn't have voodoo sewn into it. And not just energetically, organically, but symbolically. My bebes, my designs all have a strong component to voodoo and West African tradition within them. For me, when I look at Mardi Gras, when I look at Carnival, I'm seeing a voodoo ceremony happening in various components. Our skull and bones could certainly be the ancestral masquerades known as Egungun masquerades in West Africa. Our baby dolls and certainly our Mardi Gras Indians are representing ancestral spirits that have come back to be honored and acknowledged, but also to celebrate, the light that has gone before us, but also the light that is coming ahead.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about some partnerships and networks you have done here in the city with people, whether they be culture bearers, celebrities, activists.
I am a SAG card carrying actor and performer, so certainly I've built great inroads in terms of production. I do have my own production team, and we're working on a reality TV show and also a docu-series right now as we speak. But I'm also one of the foundational creators of the New Orleans National Voodoo Day, which is a sharing and partnership with the National Voodoo Day that takes place in Ouida, Benin every January, which invites the Pan-African diaspora to come back to Benin and participate in a great Voodoo Day ceremony. So we had a successful National New Orleans Voodoo Day in January of this year. We have since partnered with the president of Benin, also with the highest ranking voodoo priest in Babalao in Benin, to create an even greater experience here in New Orleans next year, which will be happening on April 5th our symposium, and then April 6th in Congo Square, our actual National New Orleans Voodoo Day, #2.
So for yourself, what is your ultimate goal as a culture bearer in the voodoo culture? What would you say is your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal is healing, reconciliation, understanding, and certainly unity building. There's no reason we can't all religiously, spiritually, culturally operate in the shared space. We've always operated in a shared space. We hear stories of being disconnected from our roots, being disconnected from our families being torn apart. But we in Voodoo have always understood that the dead never leave us, the separated never leave us, but science now supports that ancestral memory survives in the blood. So certainly that rhythm, that cadence, that language, that movement exists within our very blood, our very being. So there's something that unifies us all if we get beyond race and politics and shenanigans.
So you spoke earlier, you said you came to the city of New Orleans and they didn't have a voodoo house. Certainly a lot of voodoo history, but
Yes.
not an actual house. Tell me a little bit about the voodoo house.
In voodoo tradition, whether we're looking at Candomblé in Brazil, or Haitian voodoo in Haiti, or West African voodoo indeed, there's always a centralized location where we come together to share. You might see it as a synagogue or a church, or some other form of mosque or temple. I was looking for that. I was looking for a unified structure, and there was none. So I then sought to ingratiate myself into the feet of elders in the community who were operating in that proverbial voodoo space independently. So I built relationships with people like Princess Miriam and Mama Lola and our great elder who just passed, Dr. Glover, and many others. Also, over the decades, I've built relationships with various traditions: Santeria, Nago tradition, Isheshe, Yoruba, and so I can see and saw a pathway of bringing those traditions together in one space. Congo Square affords us a space to come together and celebrate and have our various events, but you don't necessarily see that unified link, if you will, between the houses. So I pride myself on being that link that's bringing New Orleans, Louisiana voodoo together with Haitian voodoo, and certainly with West African voodoo. Honan Dagbo II, one of the highest voodoo priests in Benin, came here to Congo Square about 5 years ago and declared me the king and leader of authentic New Orleans voodoo. And I take that very seriously. So part of that mission is to not only further the growth process of National New Orleans Voodoo Day, but do the grassroots foundation work of bringing various communities together. Outreach is one of my departments that I'm over in the National New Orleans Voodoo Day organization. So reaching out to Catholic churches, Christian churches, evangelical churches, non-denominational spaces within the community to dispel the fear and ignorance about what voodoo is, and to show them where we come together, where we link and sing together and can be, a great universal family. Over 2 million people travel to National Voodoo Day in Benin. I see no reason why we cannot have over 200 people traveling to New Orleans, often thought to be the spiritual center of Black America, the spiritual center of America, to come with the same purpose of unifying in nature, in spirit.
Okay. Speaking of those events and unifying, do you have any upcoming major events that the Prince himself is hosting and have an idea thinking about bringing to the city?
Well, I always acknowledge Marie Laveau's birthday. Marie Laveau is a major player in terms of the voodoo awareness here in our city and certainly globally, and we acknowledge her on September 10th. We're having a huge group initiation also in September. So there will be people coming from all over the country to be initiated in New Orleans Voodoo, but also Haitian Voodoo. Certainly there's, the Halloween season, which we don't necessarily acknowledge, but it is a gateway to, for many people, All Saints and All Souls Day. We reference as Fête Gede, the celebration of the dead, and we acknowledge those who've transitioned, who've passed on, and certainly ancestors that hold us together, even from the spiritual realm.
Okay, good. So, real quick, what inspired you to join the culture of Voodoo? At what point did that pique your interest and you joined?
The first conversation that I witnessed as a toddler in my household was about Voodoo. It was discussed in hushed tones, sometimes in very aggressive tones. Particularly my father's side of the family from Louisiana, they're certain that my great uncle was made blind in his teens by Voodoo. That a woman put some type of potion in his hat, he went into the cotton field and it ran down to his eyes and he went blind. So the first conversation about religion, about culture, about superstition that I witnessed was Voodoo, and it sparked an interest in me, being a child of I'm about to age myself, the late 60s, the 70s, black power, black culture, black music. And my mother, a retired educator, afforded me that freedom to go to museums, to go to libraries, to explore.
What practices can we change to make it easier for the truth about Voodoo to be expressed so that things are cleared up and people can be more aware of the practice?
We certainly can make space for it. I'm grateful to the Presbyterian Museum here in Louisiana that featured one of my Black Hawk Voodoo suits. I'm grateful for Musée du Croix Bradley in Paris that featured several of my suits. But at the local level, at the grassroots level, we must build inroads between all religions, the church, the Catholic Church, Islam, Judaism, in order to create an environment, a safe space where Aboriginal and indigenous traditions can be allowed to continue to grow and flourish. We're seeing, I call it a great falling away from organized religions, particularly individuals of a particular age group, certainly younger than me, that are just not accepting organized religion the way my generation did, or the generations that came before me. I would rather them have a safe place to go than to sort of wander spiritually, emotionally, often, just trying to figure out where they are. Our youth suicide rate is just way too high. Our inability to accept diversity in our community is way too high for the times that we now live in, where the World Wide Web, where information is available often at your fingertips. So we have an opportunity, a great opportunity right now to build a bridge, to extend a hand of unity so that this can be re-educated into our community and dispel the myths and the outright, misrepresentations of Voodoo as somehow being witchcraft or satanic. Witchcraft is a very taboo word in Voodoo and in indigenous traditions as a whole. So when I hear witchcraft, I hear ego and wanting to control nature in a way that is not in balance with nature. And so we see that happening at the political level, at the religious level, all over the world. It's not something that is owned, if you will, by Voodoo.
So next question is, what is your favorite part of preparing as a masking Indian, as a Voodoo priest, whether it's presenting out and educating folks? What's your favorite part of the process of preparing to kind of come out and express the culture?
Three things in this order: community, ritual, performance. Certainly it's an opportunity for community. You cannot do this by yourself. You just can't. It would consume your entire life if all I did was sew all day, if all I did was prepare my suit and then just show up on Mardi Gras Day. So there has to be a continued support of community. Certainly ritual. There's nothing that I do that does not involve prayer, ritual, often divination. I often don't know what my suit is going to be without consulting spirit and allowing spirit to sort of get involved in that process. Ritual would certainly include not just Indian practice, but our going out into the community, reaching the young people, certainly reaching the elders. There's not a suit that I've created that didn't involve, a half a dozen elders and their opinion and their experience about that suit. So I often say people come for Mardi Gras Day, not understanding that it's maybe a month-long carnival process, not understanding that for many of us it's a year or 2 years of process just to be prepared for that one day. The suit that I'm working on now for 2025, I've been sewing for 3 years. So we come out, we have a great time, in that moment, but it's a lifelong vocation for us. So certainly community, ritual, and then performance. There's certainly an element of performance to black masking traditions. We often can't come out in public without, someone putting a camera in our face. Or being offered opportunities to open events, open ceremonies, to be put on display in museums. So there's a strong element of performance there that I think is often overlooked. I'm being diplomatic. It's often overlooked, but in many cases it's just outright disregarded. I've been booked to work on many productions, TV shows, movies, and they often want to treat us like background in terms of pay and then in terms of representation. I gained my SAG card by masking Mardi Gras Indian for a television show. But that was one opportunity out of many. There are many in our community who mask baby doll, who mask skull and bone, who mask Indian, who have not been given the skills, have not been instructed on how to be self-supporting in that process. It not only takes a lot of time and energy, and it's hard on the body, to sew 12 hours out of a day, but it's a lot of resources that are also involved. And we can't all, be codependent on, one or two agencies to issue out, a grant. And that grant might not even cover what's necessary to have a successful carnival season. So that information, that knowledge, that skill must be translated out to the community. How to become self-supporting, self-promoting, self-marketing, so that the benefit of the whole culture survives and gains the same degree of wealth and longevity as many other performance arts that we acknowledge in our society.
Right. So, if there were any upcoming younger people coming into the culture seeking knowledge on voodoo and different practices for as black masking Indians and things like that, what's some advice that you would leave with them today here on camera to kind of guide them in the right direction and tell them what's expected?
I beg of you, reach out to your elders and those who are operating authentically in these traditions. There's a lot of misinformation on TikTok. There's a lot of misinformation on Instagram. I've said in a previous post of my own, people thinking all it takes is a top knot, fabric wrapped around your head, maybe some clackety gel nails, and a tarot card deck, and that somehow represents voodoo. And none of that is voodoo. None of that is EP5. None of that is truly authentic to these Aboriginal traditions. So reach out to those elders, those experienced persons who are operating in those traditions, and then be prepared to learn. Often, in my own experience, particularly being a former member of the Apostolic Church, I see people bringing a church mentality to voodoo. So with that comes fear often, their past experiences, with their religious organizations. They often bring that with them to voodoo. And so I have to sort of work away that layer first. Then there's the learning and the apprehension of new information. Often learning another language, whether it be Yoruba or Ewe or Fon or even Haitian Creole, in order to operate in authentic Haitian voodoo. That can sometimes be a challenge. Learning a new way of viewing the world. Again, voodoo is nature. We're taught very different lessons in organized religion about our relationship to God, our own personal sense of empowerment, but then also our connection to the community. There's a lot of New Age talk about self-empowerment and doing my own shadow work and doing my own healing, and you don't make that connection between community and culture. Ashe, a Yoruba word that's used throughout the Pan-African diaspora to mean power, to mean thankfulness. Ashe is really a shared energy. We share Ashe. We confer Ashe on a particular shrine or altar, on an event. It's not something that we own personally, or that's just personal to us. So we live in a very isolated time. People feel very isolated, very individualistic. They feel the need to protect themselves, if you will, from others. And it's also short-circuiting sort of a universal understanding of community, village, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead and tell the people where the Voodoo House is located, where they can find you, any social medias or websites where they can contact the Prince directly when they're here in the city of New Orleans.
My website is www.houseofthedivineprince.com. It's one word. I'm very easy to Google. My house is on Google Maps. You can Google Divine Prince, Thai, Emmecca. Certainly, I'm on every social media platform. Be careful. I'm being spoofed. People are creating fake profiles, using my pictures, various misspellings of my name, primarily to defraud you out of your time and your money. So certainly visit my website, www.houseofthedivineprince.com. You can also find me in Google Maps, and certainly at Backstreet Cultural Arts Center. They would certainly direct you to my temple space. I am literally one block over from Backstreet Cultural Museum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to wrap it up again. Episode 5.
All right.